Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Andrew Knox in for Gordon Robertson. The U.S. is airdropping humanitarian aid to Gazans displaced by the war, along with several nations, including Israel.
Vice President Kamala Harris is now demanding Hamas agree to a ceasefire, even though the terror group is refusing to give Israel a list of all hostages still alive. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Several nations, including Israel, are dropping aid to Gaza by air in an attempt to get help directly to the citizens of Gaza, who the UN reports are on the verge of starvation. The IDF says much of the aid going into Gaza by land is stolen by Hamas, and tells CBN News the humanitarian crisis serves the propaganda goals of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Ceasefire talks resumed in Cairo, but Hamas refuses to provide information on the well-being of the hostages, a key demand by Israel. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says it's up to Hamas to agree to the ceasefire.
Let's get a ceasefire. Let's reunite the hostages with their families, and let's provide immediate relief to the people of Gaza.
Harris criticized Israel for not doing more to increase aid into Gaza and said humanitarian aid convoys must not be targeted. The IDF denies it targeted Gazans and says it's reviewed last week's tragedy when more than 100 Gazans died in a rush to get aid.
Our initial review has confirmed that no strike was carried out by the IDF towards the aid convoy. The majority of Palestinians were killed or injured as a result of the stampede.
Retired General Amir Avivi tells CBN News the war is at a critical moment.
Because the Hamas retreated to Rafah, all the leadership is there, the hostages are there, and now this is the decisive moment where when the IDF will go into Rafah, this will be the defeat of Hamas.
In the meantime, War Cabinet member Benny Gantz traveled to Washington and is expected to meet with Vice President Harris. Prime Minister Netanyahu rebuked Gantz, saying there's only one prime minister, and told Israeli officials in D.C. not to meet or help Gantz. Some see the impromptu visit as an attempt to undermine Netanyahu and pressure him to make more concessions to the U.S. In hopeful news, students have begun to return to the southern community of Sderot, 5 months after the Hamas massacre on October 7th.
Look at the joy. If we were looking for a symbol of victory, so look around. This is the symbol of victory of Sderot. This is the symbol of victory of the people of Israel.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks so much, Chris. Here at home, tomorrow is Super Tuesday, the biggest day so far on the election calendar. Republicans and Democrats in 15 states will hold primaries to decide their nominees for president. There seems to be little question about the outcomes, and Dale Hurd has the details.
As the nation prepares for Super Tuesday, President Biden and former President Trump are leading everywhere the delegates are up for grabs. Donald Trump has a wide lead over Nikki Haley, and Joe Biden has all but 2 of Democratic delegates so far. CBN News reporter Tara Mergener was at the Trump rally in Richmond, Virginia over the weekend.
Ahead of Super Tuesday, Donald Trump is dominating the GOP primary in Virginia. Here in Richmond, supporters started lining up the day before to get a spot inside the rally.
Those Trump supporters voiced many of the same concerns.
I love his America First stance.
I want the borders closed.
The economy.
The illegal border crossing.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley did win the District of Columbia's GOP primary on Sunday in her first victory over Donald Trump in the 2024 cycle.
This is the time for us to make our choice. This is the time for us to be loud and let everybody know that America is better than what we see right now.
Since D.C. is one of the most heavily Democratic jurisdictions in the country with only about 23,000 registered Republicans, the Trump campaign sarcastically congratulated Haley for being elected Queen of the Swamp.
She was going around every show, Donald Trump, this and that. That wasn't working too well.
Trump is likely to pick up several hundred more delegates tomorrow. On NBC's Meet the Press, Haley refused to pledge to endorse him if he's the GOP nominee.
So you're no longer bound by that pledge? No, I think I'll make what decision I want to make.
More bad news for Joe Biden as he prepares to deliver the State of the Union Thursday. A new AP poll shows 6 in 10 Americans doubt his mental fitness. He trails both Trump and Haley in a New York Times poll, and 2/3 of voters think the country is headed in the wrong direction. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden was stumping for her husband in Las Vegas.
We are immovable and unstoppable.
Biden's bad polling numbers come after the Michigan primary, in which more than 100,000 Democratic primary voters chose uncommitted. What's seen as a protest vote by Arab American voters over his support for the war in Gaza could come back to haunt the president in November. Former President Trump could learn today whether the Supreme Court will allow states to ban him from their ballots. The justices are expected to decide a Colorado case kicking Trump off the ballot over actions related to January 6th. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. Joining us now for more is CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, what do you think? Will Nikki Haley drop out after Super Tuesday? And what really does she gain if she stays in the race?
Well, the answer to the first part of the question, Andrew, and good morning, by the way, yes, absolutely. She'll drop out after Super Tuesday. At that point, Donald Trump will be way on his way to winning this nomination. He's got about 247 delegates right now. There's over 800 plus to be decided on Super Tuesday. Donald Trump expected to win most of those. So Donald Trump will be close to 1,000 delegates at that point. You need 1,200, 1,215 technically to win the nomination. It'll be a game, set, match for Nikki Haley. She'll get out, and she doesn't have much to win at all at this point. Maybe a potential show on MSNBC. She's kind of morphing into the new Liz Cheney. But other than that, that's about it.
Dale's report, we heard Jill Biden say the campaign is immovable and unstoppable. But a new poll shows 6 out of 10 voters doubt Biden's mental capacity. Do you think he will be the nominee?
You know, that is a really tough question. I will say I personally, from an analysis standpoint, don't see him being the nominee. Now, having said that, let's be honest. This is all up to Joe Biden. You know, Jill Biden just said that Joe is unmovable. That's true. There's a lot of stubbornness on Joe Biden's part. There have been Democrats that have gone to him and said, Joe, let's have a discussion. And Joe will not have that discussion. So at what point, Andrew, does it get to where Democrats say, Joe, listen, we are going to lose to Donald Trump. You are going to lose to Donald Trump. I mean, poll after poll shows this. Andrew, let's put this in perspective about the polls, because everybody says, oh, it's one poll, it's 2 polls. No. Donald Trump didn't beat Joe Biden in any national poll in 2020. 0. He's beating them consistently in the last 4, 5, 6 months in poll after poll after poll. It is not good for Joe Biden. So at some point, you have to wonder whether or not he'll be the nominee. But that will be up to Joe Biden. If his stubbornness and he decides that he's the only guy that can beat Trump, well, then they may have a rude awakening come November.
So you're saying he's already refused, you know, people saying, Joe, now's not the year. You're saying he's already said enough of that already?
Well, privately, yes. And then also publicly, look what's been happening. I mean, Democrats have come out. Man, we hear death by 1,000 paper cuts. This is death by 1,000 paper headlines. I mean, there's been headline after headline on purpose by Democrats. David Axelrod, just recently former Obama staffers, suggesting that maybe the Democrat Party needs to go in a different direction. This is a way to kind of get Joe Biden to listen and have it done, kind of a smooth way. But he's clearly, if he's not getting the message, he doesn't want to receive the message.
All right, well, the Supreme Court agreed to hear Trump's case claiming immunity for actions while in office. So that could push his trial for alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election late into the campaign. So how might seeing a candidate on trial affect the vote in November?
Well, that's the Democrats' wild card in all of this. This is what they're hoping for. And polls have shown that Donald Trump's support would slip if he was convicted, not necessarily in the middle of a trial, but if convicted. But Andrew, the timing on all of this is curious. Well, I shouldn't say curious. It's going to be suspect to the point where you wonder if any of these trials will actually come through towards the before November 4th, if they'll be concluded before November 4th. Right now, Donald Trump is on a path for an inside straight. I mean, he may be able to defeat New York. Georgia is falling apart. You've got the Jack Smith case, both in Florida, the classified documents case, and the January 6th case that could be delayed and delayed and delayed. So you may not have any sort of conviction before November, and that's bad news for Democrats.
All right, State of the Union coming up this week. What does the president need to do to convince voters he is up to the job? I imagine a lot of his staff is sweating it out a little bit this week. What do you think?
Well, here's the problem. You say, what can he do? Here's the problem with the State of the Union. It's what he says, but not what he's actually doing. And what he is doing, Americans aren't agreeing with it. So he can say whatever he wants. But the truth of the matter is, whether it be on the border, whether it be on the economy, and just go down the list, voters aren't buying what Joe Biden is selling. And I think that's the big part of it. But in answer to your question, look, I think that the only logical play here for Biden is to spend quite a bit of the address on the abortion issue. Now, he won't do that. He'll spend some time on it, but he's not going to spend most of his time on the abortion issue, obviously. But that is the one issue that Democrats have a leg up on politically in 2024, and they're banking a lot of their strategy on hoping they can get suburban women, especially overall, in their camp and somehow stop the bleeding. But Andrew, I know we had a wrap, but let me just be clear. The bleeding is everywhere. Donald Trump, ready for this? Donald Trump beating Donald Trump beating Joe Biden with Hispanic voters, 46 to 40%. He had 8% support from African Americans in 2020. That's up to 23% in the latest poll. Joe Biden is hemorrhaging everywhere. Not a good sign for him or the Democrats.
All right, David, appreciate you joining us every time. Really appreciate you with us and look forward to your reports coming up.